How is it going, everyone? And welcome back to another episode of Buddy's House of Horror podcast. It is a beautiful autumn day outside, and we have a hell of an episode for you guys out there. One of the most requested episodes of the show ever. Of course, this is our official re-ranking of the Halloween franchise. If you remember, we did this episode a few years back, but that was before every film in the franchise was out. Of course, the trilogy was announced, but Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends were still figments of our imagination. Now everything is out, it's tangible, and it is rankable. So today we are ranking the entire Halloween franchise, and without further ado, we're just gonna get right to the show. But before we do that, if you guys haven't already, please make sure you're subscribing to the show wherever you're listening to the show, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you're listening to the show. Make sure you're leaving us a rating, a review, giving us a thumbs up, and spreading the good word about Buddy's House of Horror. If you have any friends, family members, co-workers, mortal enemies, just anyone who would enjoy Buddy's House of Horror, make sure you're pointing this show in their direction. And without further ado, as I said, this is our re-ranking of one of the most needlessly complicated timelines in horror history, the Halloween franchise. Now it's time to get spooky. How is it going, everybody? We are rolling sound on one of the most heavily anticipated episodes of Buddy's House of Horror podcast. A very exhilarating show today, ladies and gentlemen. We are re-ranking every single film in the Halloween franchise. And of course, I am joined by my esteemed guest, a man of many names, many faces, but you know him as Midnight Miles, the Rizzler. Miles, very excited to have you on the show tonight. Very excited to do this episode, a long time coming, no doubt. Yeah, stoked to be here and stoked that you are here.
We're here. We finally made it. We're finally going to do the proper ranking of the series, including us doing rewatches for every film and the films that have come out after the last podcast we did.
Yes, so it has been... that was 4 years ago or 5 years ago?
That was 2020. So
that was 2020. So 4 years ago, we ranked the original... Well, we ranked the original series, the Rob Zombie remakes, and the only one film that was out on the time of the David Gordon Green, what would become the trilogy. But now everything has come to an end, allegedly. So this is the full series. And
including Season of the Witch.
Including Season of the Witch. We did not include Season of the Witch originally. But this is including all aspects of Halloween, except basically the TV edits of the films. Those
we're not
being
going
included.
that hard. Yeah, we're not going
all the theatrical runs, maybe a little bit of a producer's cut thrown in. But very excited to be here. We did rewatch the entire series leading up to this podcast. Notoriously, on the original run, we just did it based off of memory. This round, we really revisited this series, which was an exciting thing to do and something I've wanted to do for a few years. Something that I forgot to do because I told Miles that there was a little bit of a story involved with this. So I took very detailed notes for these films, and leading up to this podcast, I was like, all right, I can't wait to do this. I didn't rank the films. I took all these notes, but I did not order them.
Nice.
So during the last couple minutes, as Miles and I have been chatting about Twilight New Moon of all things, he may have noticed me on my phone frantically typing things. So I now have them ranked. So this is a very not premeditated list. I watched all the films, but stream of consciousness right now, right here in this moment, this is my definitive ranking.
Definitive ranking.
Definitive
we
ranking.
can never re-record again.
Yes.
If any more Halloween films come out, which they will undoubtedly, we're not doing this whole fucking, what are we on, 13 films? 13, right? We're doing
this is 13.
So we're not going to do 15, 16. I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. A couple of these films, because I actually rewatched the entire series last year for myself. So I've now rewatched the Halloween series in its entirety twice. And I'll tell you, I love me some Michael Myers, but fuck, I don't want to do this again for a while. especially probably a couple towards the bottom. I think, in all honesty, there's a couple towards the bottom that if I never have to watch them again, I think I'm good. I think I'm solid, you know?
We've talked on other shows. This is our 5th anniversary of doing podcasts together. Maybe on our 25th, we'll rewatch all the Halloween films again.
Hopefully we'll be like, we can have some sort of like 3D graphics that our minds, you know, we're like.
I mean, the entire podcast will just be AI, so it doesn't matter. We won't ever have to do it again. So
it'll just be our floating heads. Our bodies will be hopefully fully robotic. Anyways, off on a tangent already.
But I was going to say, we're setting the stage. We're having our first pumpkin beer of the year. At least it's my first of the year.
I am. Sounds awful. I won't word it this way. As I've probably hinted or talked about in other podcasts, I don't really drink it all anymore. But it's been a couple years since literally a couple years since me and Buddy have probably had a beer together. So we will be having a couple refreshments during this episode for old time's sake. I don't know if I need to apologize in advance. Hopefully it'll be fine. But I'm just throwing that out there, FYI, for the listening audience. But this will be a long one, as anyone can imagine. So just strap your seatbelts, because we're in it for the long haul today.
Yes, we are. So with that said, should we just sort of stop beating around the bush here and get into it? We're getting our second holiday beer, so we got.
To be fair, we did split it with your wife the first beer. So go ahead, introduce what we're gonna have. I guess we'll open it right on the air.
You brought the beverage. You can introduce it.
You're the host, though, my
friend. It's the pumpkin pie Kolsch. Is that how you say it?
Yes, Kolsch
by Mueller Brew Barn.
I've never had anything from this brewery, but my brother-in-law, I believe, has had stuff from them. So I saw this at the store the other day, and I was like, well, let's get one for me and Buddy. I said, we'll open it right on the air.
Yeah.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Let's open it.
Before we even open the can, we're cheering.
Yeah. We live by our own rules on this podcast.
Right.
I'm going to pour it. Or you know what? Yeah, I'll pour this one. I'll save the cozy for a little bit later in the podcast.
Okay, so we'll pour this. We'll do
a nice little pour. Thank you again for having me on after all these years. I'm hoping that this kind of wipes. We'll use the word palate as we're talking about putting some new flavors on our palate right now. I'm hoping this podcast is a palate cleanser for the last time I talked about Michael Myers with you. I still have PTSD, and one of the reasons why I don't think I can do another podcast with Dynamite Jared until we inevitably do probably the other most talked about series between the two of you in Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
So I even then I think you and we're gonna get into it a little bit on this podcast on a couple films. But do you want to explain to everyone, maybe if they haven't listened or didn't listen to the other one, how we're gonna do this?
So when we do these rankings, we go back and forth. I always let the guest go first. So we'll be going from the 13th, so the worst, ranking it all the way up to the best. So worst to first, 13 through 1. We're ranking the original series, obviously going through Halloween 1 and 2 and 3, then the Thorn trilogy, talking about the run in the 90s, talking about Rob Zombies, and then, of course, the new trilogy. Again, you watched them all last year. It's been a while since I actually went through and watched all of these. So it was a hell of a run. It was a hell of a trip to do all these.
We did Saw last year, and once you start getting these series that have over 10 films, even if you just take notes on most of them, or even just some bullet points, half page of bullet points, page of bullet points, it's an okay amount of work to really think about this and try to put something together. You know?
I will say, because I've had the first couple sips of this now, you're really getting the pumpkin pie aspect of this. It's not a pumpkin beer. This is a true pumpkin pie beer.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Pretty good. It's really creamy. It's nice.
And we're actually not in kayfabe today. It actually is now fall.
Yes.
And we're recording this. And Ohio, it's gloomy and overcast. It's a little bit windy. It's definitely the perfect mood to be recording.
You reminded me, I forgot to set the ambiance on the TV, so we're getting the 1978 Doyle house after this ad on the TV to really set the stage for us. For the listeners at home, you'll have to set your own ambiance. But when I was ranking these films, I guess I'll talk a little bit about my process when I was thinking about how I wanted to rank them, and then when I initially ranked them, I tried to judge the films basically based upon the film itself and what came before it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So not like, for example, not judging H2O based upon what happens in Resurrection.
Yes.
Basing it on the film itself and what preceded it, not the ending is messed up because this, that, and the other thing or whatever. So that's how I sort of judge these. Did you, when you rewatched it the second time, was there anything just in general that surprised you? Any thoughts you had about the franchise just in general that maybe you weren't expecting?
There were. My order has definitely changed. I guess I'll just start off with that compared to
Last time
for sure. I mean, obviously, because I'm not just going off of a nostalgic memory of certain films, certain this. And I've found myself enjoying some a little bit more. I definitely will say probably a few of them have become, I think watching them 2 years in a row, a few of them have become pretty tedious rewatches where, I hate to say it, there's I want to say this right off the bat. And I know that because I've seen a couple of your Letterboxd scores. I did not rank a single film on Letterboxd. When this podcast ends tonight, I will give my Letterboxd scores. I'll just dump them, all 13 of them on there. I like parts of every single film, even from the bottom, me personally. It's just unfortunate that the Halloween franchise has multiple films that are very uneven in tone. Probably, honestly, compared to the other franchises we've done, the Halloween franchise is probably the most uneven as far as consistency film to film to film. Would you agree with that? What do you think?
I would agree, like, tone-wise. Like, a lot of them, especially sort of with the later Thorn trilogy films or even the David Gordon Green ones, it kind of is losing its identity a little bit in some ways.
Yeah.
And I will say Nightmare on Elm Street kind of does this too, where, like, if you were to watch the first film and then jump to, like, Freddy's Dead or something, you're like, what happened?
Yes.
So, like, this one, especially when you do throw in that curveball of Halloween 3, when you do throw in the Rob Zombie ones that are so, like, wildly different, it's kind of hard to... differentiating the films is such an easier thing because they all look and feel so different. It's not like Friday the 13th where, like, certain moments you have to kind of be like, oh, was that in 6 or was that in 7? Like, when this, everything is very distinct, but not necessarily always for the reasons you want, I guess.
I think this franchise and why we chose to re-rank it is... I think you and I have different opinions, we definitely do, on maybe what we want from the Halloween franchise. But now, like, when I see things about Michael Myers or the Halloween franchise online, I see people have wildly different opinions. I see people that love the original and then love both the Rob Zombie films. I see people that love the David Gordon Green trilogy. I see people that, like, it. I feel like maybe Halloween of any of the franchises is the easiest to, let's say, do a choose your own path or choose your own adventure, which makes it, I think, fun and probably why we went back and re-ranked it, besides the fact that there are new additions to the franchise.
It's definitely, it's not like one of those series where, like, okay, Saw, like, everyone likes the same couple ones. Like, we debated doing, there was one franchise, the Night of the Dead trilogy or whatever, but even including Survival of the Dead, whatever, we were like, well, we can't really do that because we know what the top 3 are, like, gonna be, so, like, it's kind of, like, redundant. Like, this franchise more than any other, like, you can totally see someone liking Season of the Witch #1 for some people, like, you know what I mean?
And
like,
I actually know a couple people that feel that way.
So my list is a lot different from what it was originally. Yours is a lot different, and I feel in the fandom, like, there's a lot of people who it's gonna be hard to find someone with the same exact 13 in the same exact order.
That's correct. Yes. You want to get started? I think we've explained things well enough, right?
I think so. I will say in general, one of the observations I had, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit when you see where I have stuff ranked, they have a hard time, just the series in general, wrapping up their eras. I will say that.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Like, the first three I consider an era.
Yes.
The Thorn trilogy is its own era. The 90s, the Rob Zombie, and this. Each iteration, I'll just say the endings to all of them, from one way or another, kind of feel a little flat. Like, even with Halloween 3, just because it's not like a true ending of... I don't know what I'm, like, trying to say, but, like, you get what I'm saying. Like, each era... Like, the last one just kind of... And maybe that's why they keep making them. Like, the last one, you're kind of like... I don't know. I wish that wasn't the end of it. I mean, I don't know.
It's hard, too, because this franchise has... Like you just said, it's in blocks. It is from 1978 to 82. Then it's from 88 to 95. Then it's 98 to 2002. Then it's 2007 to 2009. Then it's 2018 to 2022. It's very odd. Like, there'll be 3 to 5 year gaps in between each one.
It's very, like, segmented.
Yes, yes. So you're going to get that's probably, again, why. I mean, it's self-explanatory, but, like, the people that choose your own path or choose your own adventure, you could have people that grew up and saw their first Halloween was Rob Zombie's remake.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely a very interesting franchise. Basically, even though, and this is a questionable take, that the first Halloween was more of a thriller than a slasher, that's a little bit of my take, but it still is... I guess, the godfather of modern slasher films and the template, even though, if we're being honest, more people took the Friday the 13th template and then went on and made their own film.
Right. I will say, this will be my pitch to John Carpenter, because I know he likes some wacky shit, because he wanted to put Michael Myers in space.
I mean, I like wacky shit too.
I'm telling the studios out there, if you want to bring this franchise back in style and you have someone who is ready to do it, it's me, and we have to do Halloween Enter the Michaelverse. The multiverse of Michael Myers.
I already love this.
You gotta... Josh Hartnett comes back. You gotta get fucking Jamie Lee Curtis while she's still kicking. You gotta get fucking Daniel Harris. Just bring all the eras together and finish this fucker Michael Myers off the way he's meant to be finished off and make everybody happy.
Can you explain, before we go into our ranking, we're going to go into some sidebars here, so this is a long podcast, but we're looking at, what are we looking at right now? And why is there a random cigarette graphic off to the side, but I can't see the cigarette? You just see the smoke.
Well, right now we're looking at Halloween ambiance from 1978. We're now in the bedroom with the Judas Myers headstone, but there is a cigarette. I can't remember the character's name at the top of my head, but was she smoking when she was in there?
I'm just I don't remember all of these parts together, but somehow I like this. I love this.
Yeah.
Sorry, side tangent. All right. Am I starting it off?
You're starting it off, yeah.
All right. I, on this rewatch, struggled with I want to say struggled, but between two films, what would be my lowest? And I had a better time with this film than I did of any of the previous rewatches, but when I thought about it, I just couldn't. I don't like it. I like parts of it, but it's just the bottom for me. So I'm going to go with my number 13 is Halloween H2O.
Again, at the bottom of the list 2 times in a row.
You know, and I took notes. I took a fair amount of notes. Here's my biggest problem with this. The film is actually, as far as when it gets to the Laurie story, it is only 69 minutes of screen time. It doesn't feel... It feels so safe, so by the numbers, no memorable kills. I don't need a high body count, but the kills are about as mid as can be. Not a single memorable one. The only thing that people really remember it for is for, I mean, spoiler if you're listening for all of these films, just throwing that out there. But Laurie killing Michael at the end. But if I'm being honest, on this rewatch, even the chase sequences with them at the end is significantly shorter than even the, because I was timing things, even seemingly shorter than the original Halloween and all the David Gordon Green things where they interact. And it just feels like a WBCW pilot for a TV series that never got off.
It does give off made-for-TV vibes.
Okay, thank you. I took a lot of, some stuff I like. I'm going to spitball just a few things. I mean, I said this probably in the last one, maybe. I do love the first 10 to 12-minute opening. It's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the punk kid, and they're trying to steal the beer from the nurse. The best kill in the entire film is arguably, to me, the ice hockey boot to the face, and you kill a kid in it. I mean, it has a strong start, but then it goes into just introducing the school. You never really, I mean, you can put two and two together why they're there. They wanted to leave Haddonfield. They wanted this and that. But there's really not a lot of great world building. You pretty much just have to accept things at face value, which works if you have, let's say, a strong enough film after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like Jamie Lee and I like Josh Hartnett. I think they have a good chemistry, actually, in the few scenes they have together as far as a mother and son chemistry. LL Cool J's character is fun. He's one of the more fun characters in the entire series. I'll give it that. Obviously, the Jamie and Janet Leigh introduction. I even like Laurie and her love interest Will. I think the whole stuff of her struggling with alcoholism. I think there are some interesting beats, but the problem is you never really see any of these things come to any kind of conclusion or really they don't grow. They have no time to grow because the film's only 80 some minutes long. I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean? They introduce these beats. I would say that half hour, I'm like, okay, we're introducing, the mother and son chemistry, the relationship, all this, but everything is basically a surface level of those interactions, and that's it.
It's very hollow.
Yes.
It is very hollow.
Ooh, there you go. All right.
But I agree with pretty much everything you said. I don't have it at number 13, but it has dropped significantly since the original ranking of this.
I've tried to be. I went in with all these with a completely open mind. I have no problem. I am not elitist with any of my rankings. If I watch something again and it just doesn't hit at all, fuck it, I'll put it. I really don't care. As I've said in other podcasts, Jason Voorhees is my main man. So I am not biased with Michael Myers, even though I love the franchise. But 13, H2O, it's too fucking mid for me, man.
I respect it and I understand. As long as you respect and understand number 13.
I'm trying to, because I know what it is, but I don't know if I still feel like you're not giving it a fair rewatch. But I want to hear. I
rewatched it.
Okay.
Did I rewatch it? Ladies and gentlemen, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I had the worst time out of any of these films. Again, with an open mind, watching all of them. Halloween Ends. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a good film. I know Miles is going to have it. If not in his top 3, it's going to be dangerously close to the top 3. Dangerously close. And I went on this with an open mind. The only notes that I took for this were things that I liked. I went into this not being like, I'm going to hate on this film during the podcast with Miles, because I've done that already in multiple podcasts. It's bad when the IMDb official synopsis for the film says the plot follows the outcast Corey Cunningham who falls in love with Laurie Strode's granddaughter. While a series of events, including crossing paths with Michael Myers, which they do cross paths, drives him to become a serial killer. when the synopsis of your Michael Myers movie, and Michael is the third name mentioned as an afterthought, that tells you how I feel about this film. Literally from the first millisecond of the film when it starts, you see the Universal logo come up, and you're hearing like radio buzzers and stuff. It lets you know that you're in for something wildly different from any Halloween film you've probably ever seen before. I don't know. It doesn't establish good tone for me right off the bat. Some things that I liked. I liked they're watching John Carpenter's The Thing. But I will admit, it reminds you of what you're not watching, because you could be watching John Carpenter's The Thing.
I was gonna make a joke. I said, you still gave it the score you gave it. Even the fact that John Carpenter's The Thing was in it should make it at least a half star higher than what it is.
That's the only reason why there is the half star, my friend.
Oh my god! I'm sorry. I know some of the absolute shit that you've watched, because I have watched some absolute dog fucking shit, and Halloween Ends is way better than that. But I am gonna say my piece more later in the podcast, so I'm gonna let you keep going.
Just the whole, like I said, the whole opening sucks. I hate the CG pumpkins exploding into themselves. It looks awful. I'm surprised as a practical effect guy, you don't have more to say about how bad that was. I do like the opening segment with Corey in the house with the kid who falls down or whatever. I like that opening. I like the scene with the record player, obviously. There's not a whole
the kill, you mean?
With the tongue on the record. There's not a whole lot else for me to like in this. Especially because you'll see when I get later on into my list of some of the other films that I have ranked, I've never seen a trilogy, not counting Halloween 3 because it's a completely separate thing. I've never seen a trilogy just completely neglect the prior films in that trilogy more than this. And this isn't even a Halloween thing specifically. I'm just talking a trilogy of films. I've never seen such a drastic turn in the third film.
I don't think you're wrong. No, I don't think that. I think each of them, as someone I've watched all of them, this trilogy, at least 3 to 4 times. I probably have watched, as far as like modern films, I don't think I've watched any films that have came out in the past 5 to 10 years more than this new Halloween trilogy. The only other thing would probably be actually the new Star Wars trilogy, which is strange, but I think you understand that I do love both of those universes.
I will say Rise of Skywalker, too. Like, a lot of people have to say what they want to say about that, not having anything to do with the 2 prior films and just throwing whatever at the wall and seeing if it sticks. Halloween Ends does it even worse than that, guys. Even worse than that. But again, I'm not going to spend the whole time trashing it. I don't know. I mean, after the first 2 where I was like so high on them, like I was just really let down with it in theaters and in the second time watching it. And I know Miles is like, oh, David Gordon Green wanted to tell a love story. It was like, okay, well that doesn't matter if it's a love story or not. If it's bad, it's bad, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I got nothing else to say.
I got a lot to say, but I will... I respect it, because, again, when we started this, like I said, I think you and I at times want different things from this series, and that's why I'm interested in doing this podcast, because we both want different things from Halloween and Michael Myers, especially as a series that is now, over 45 fucking years old. So I mean, it's I respect it. Let's keep going. I think we got a lot of films to talk about today. We'll get back to Halloween Ends. But
so you're number 12.
My number 12. Let me. Well, hey, it's right there. So, all right, I am gonna keep it similar to 4 years ago. Halloween Resurrection at number 12.
It's also my number 12, so we can speak about this freely.
Nice.
So number 12s are Halloween Resurrection. So you can start us off.
I mean, I want to say one thing. I think that the portrayal of Michael Myers in Resurrection is better than the portrayal of Michael Myers in H2O, and that is the one reason why I like, in regards to the entire franchise, I like more of the scenes, even if there's all the joke shit and reality TV shit around it. This, when Michael Myers is stalking, or the way that he looks and interacts, I think is more in line with the entire franchise than H2O. And for fuck's sake, I can't see his goddamn fucking eyes or his shitty mask from H2O. So that is why I know people are like, oh my god, H2O at the bottom. No, I'm sorry, guys. Watch it again. I'll respect
Resurrection is more in tune with the character.
Yes.
I will agree. It's
Yes.
more in tune with the look. It's more in tune to kind of what like Gordon Green was like getting at in his films. Like, Michael just wants to go the fuck home. Like,
Yes.
that's part of it too. And like,
Yes.
these people are invading his house. Like, it's a stupid premise, but it makes sense within the universe, I guess. Like, his character in this film is done well.
Yes. The kills are better than H2O. That's something I always put. There's more memorable kills.
I say this in a lot of my things. I'm really big on establishing mood and tone. I think that, like, the opening credit sequence in this, it just leaves you fucking bored. Like, from what I remember, it's literally just the song, just plain text on the screen.
It's got that weird 2000s, like early 2000s, turn of the millennium video game text that they use. It's like, I like the look, but the only reason I like the look is because it reminds me of stuff growing up. It's definitely the most boring, like you said, intro of any of the franchise, like opening text, crawl or credits. Stuff I put, I actually, I like that they officially kill at least one of them in this film. At least Laurie gets some kind of, and I like that this film just has an overall darker tone and look than H2O. H2O was way too brightly lit for me, and just certain things like that. But anyways, we'll keep spitballing off of each other. There's some other things you're feeling about it.
I mean, in general, like, I don't like the way they killed Laurie. I think there were ways that they could have worked around that. I know they only had her for like a limited amount of time. I would have maybe drawn it out a little more. Like, I would have maybe had that happen like at the end, like after he clears everyone out of his house. But like during the film, you're kind of getting glimpses of what's going on with Laurie. Like, you could have kept her screen time the same, but it's not like, okay, Laurie's gone within the first 7-8 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
Like, at least string the audience along with some kind of suspense. Because then, once you have that story element gone, it's like, okay, now I'm just basically waiting for Michael to kill people.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really... And again, some of the same reasons why I don't like Halloween Ends. It doesn't necessarily respect the storylines that was leading up to it, I guess. But that doesn't mean it's not a good time. Like, obviously, we both have it very low on our list, but this would be a hell of a film to put on with a group of friends and have your own commentary during it. Like, you know what I mean?
This would be perfect, yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting time capsule, and I think it's the one that really dates itself the most in regards to, people have fucking like beepers and pagers in the film. There's early like instant messenger chat things. They're using them to communicate. The beginning of online like webisode type stuff. I mean, it really, really dates itself within honestly like a 5-year range of time before technology surpassed it. I think it does kind of predate kind of the true crime obsession that comes into American culture. Like, now you turn on Netflix, Peacock, any of these. One of the first tabs is usually some sort of true crime documentary or show. I think it does a good job of almost getting ahead of a now worldwide trend where it puts Michael Myers as almost this, crazy true crime story that they're going to portray. Obviously brings in the obsession with reality television in the early 2000s. So it really is a time capsule of this very small window in America, especially in obviously American culture, that someone like myself and even you, like, we remember that vividly. But I don't think anyone, maybe even that was older, that was maybe younger or our age now, even in the 78, 80, or any of these kids,
it would have been completely lost on anyone besides our generation.
Yeah.
Like, if I were to show this to, like, my students now, or, like, if you were to watch it, like, with your parents or something like that, like, the culture would be completely lost. Like, no one would understand, like when we were growing up, we're watching The Real World and shit like that, or
yes.
like we're at least aware of it if we're not watching it. Like, nowadays, like, you don't really, like, see that, and then obviously before that it didn't really exist.
Exactly.
I will say one of the major downsides of this too, when it has its highs, obviously when Busta Rhymes is being insane, it's great. But, like, there are a lot of boring moments within this film too.
The dialogue's awful.
Like, you cannot neglect the slowness of a lot of this film.
Yes. Dialogue is, I mean, probably the worst script in the entire. I mean, there's some of these, like, those are great legs, baby. When do they open? I mean, just the most.
Yeah.
It's bad. The dialogue's bad. The characters are nothing. Probably the most nothing characters in the entire franchise.
I can't tell you a damn thing about the characters. I know there's the one kid from American Pie is in it.
And he's like one of the first people to die.
Yeah.
I mean, you barely even can't remember any of their names.
Here's a question. Michael Myers is trying to kill off his family, allegedly. Where the fuck is Josh Hartnett?
Facts.
There's a lot of stuff in this film that just kind of doesn't add up. And what's with the title? Halloween Resurrection. I'm proposing this to you. Did they make a change last minute? Did Michael actually die in H2O and they were going to do a resurrection storyline where he is resurrected after being decapitated and they nixed it? Or what happened here?
And I guess I'll shout out another podcast here. There's a podcast called Development Hell, and it's through the Dread Central Network. They did a whole series on unmade Halloween sequels. A lot of them were actually sequels to Resurrection. There were supposed to be 2 other sequels, possibly scripts for Resurrection.
There was one in an asylum or something,
yes,
right? Yeah.
And it was supposed to actually have Busta Rhymes' character coming back. So around this time, I feel like they were really throwing, even before Resurrection, and then the probably like a 5-year window, because look at how long, on a side note, it took them to go from H2O to Resurrection. There was almost a 4-year gap between those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there was probably some stuff that was nixed. There was probably stuff that no one even knows about as far as is left on the cutting room floor. Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, now that you say that, I mean, the title doesn't make any sense. But okay, I'll throw this on you. What would you call this then? What would you call this if you were titling this film?
Well, I'm saying they called it Resurrection, then they got cold feet about doing something supernatural.
I think Supernatural, this could have been good, because at this point, this is the film where they just throw everything out the window and they're like, we're just going to do any old fucking thing. If you want to talk about loss of identity, besides the way that Michael's character acts, this is it. You know? I mean, Tyra Banks having a dancing latte scene, I just want to throw that in there. I mean, from Michael Myers stalking people in the streets of Haddonfield in 78 to Tyra Banks fucking putting whipped cream on a latte. That's how far the franchise went.
If you were to watch Halloween 78 and then watch Resurrection back to back with no context about what happened in between, you would be very confused.
Very, very confused. I can make up a quick backstory if you wanted to do the two. Lori lost her mind, was in an asylum for 40 years. Michael was just out there on the street, came back, killed her, and they did a reality TV. Honestly, if you think about it, the stretch isn't that far if you came up with some middling backstory in between. Because you could do that. You say she's been nuts for 40 years, been in an asylum. Michael's just been out and about. Michael finally finds her, and then he just wants to go live back in his weird dungeon lair underneath the fucking... What do you think about Michael's lair on a final note? This is his little rat-eating lair underneath his house.
I mean, it makes sense. Again, it's in tune with what they were doing. So.
Well, trick or treat, motherfucker. I don't know if I really have anything else to say about Halloween Resurrection.
His layer's better than that than in Halloween Ends, I'll tell you that, brother.
Oof. All right. Here
Anyway,
taking shots.
so now we shared a 12.
I'm glad we at least shared one.
We shared a 12, so we're on to 11 now. So you can go ahead with your number 11. Look.
I gotta make sure the okay. This one was another one that was pretty easy. Let me pull there are the notes for it. All right, number
11.
11. Jesus Christ, there we go. I'm already off track. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007. Do you share that one?
We don't share an 11, but it's pretty damn close. But we don't share an 11.
Just some notes I had on this. I mean, it's the first half of the film is essentially a prequel. I mean, Rob Zombie didn't want to remake. The second half of it is basically a shot remake, but there was a lot of studio interference in this. I mean, kind of shows, it almost feels, the more I watch it, like it is two separate films, a prequel and then a proper remake. I actually decided on this. I was like, I've seen this enough. I put on Rob Zombie's commentary when I watched this for the first part of the rewatch and just shut everything else. So I'm just listening to Rob Zombie talk over this film. It was quite entertaining. If you want to have him defending why he put a rape scene in the film, it's just peak commentary if on the uncut. So I mean, if you want to,
Lord,
if you want to hear some great behind the scenes, I put a couple notes. He said the rape scene was very realistic and a draining experience for everyone. It was based on a 70s documentary he watched on hospital abuse. So he just thought, it was very in with the times that they had to have a rape scene in a hospital added to a Halloween film.
I'm telling you right now what would be a hell of a commentary. The two of us doing commentary over Rob Zombie's commentary of Halloween.
Facts. That might actually have to be, if we make it to 1,000 podcasts together or something, we'll do that. I'm throwing that out there. I think, and I said this to you, I think when we both when we rewatched it, I think this is one of Sherry Moon's better roles. I actually like her as Michael Myers' mom. I mean, there are aspects of the prequel. Rob Zombie gets his bullshit dialogue out of the way in the first 10 minutes. I honestly am blown away the film doesn't go more off the rails after the first 10 minutes of her shitty boyfriend saying a bunch of ridiculous shit, then talking about her daughter's dumper, I think he calls her ass. It's off the rails. But then miraculously, everything kind of levels out. It's very strange. He's like, let me get all the awful dialogue and sexual, innuendo stuff out of the way, and then I'll try to make a normal film. Anyways, you got anything to say about that?
We'll get to it when we get to it on mine. You got anything else you want to share?
I'll probably...
I mean, you can always chime in.
I can always chime in. Yeah. I mean, I think on this one... I think this one I did watch all the alternate endings, and I will say that I liked the original ending that he showed to test audiences, and they didn't like it. I think this was the first time I've seen all three endings. Have you seen all three endings?
No, I just watched the unrated whatever, the shot in the face one.
Yeah,
the one that everyone knows.
So I'll just give a brief explanation of the alternate, the one that I'm talking about, and then we'll go on because I know we're going to talk about it more when it hits your ranking. So the alternate ending basically, Lori gets pulled out of the car, when she's with Loomis, through the police car window or whatever. I think they go in the house. They have another chase sequence, but the chase sequence is more intense. And then it ends up with Lori and Loomis getting outside of the Myers house, but there's an entire police force there. They've shown up. Mm-hmm. And I believe, if I remember right, Myers is holding Lori hostage, and Loomis convinces Michael to let her go. And Loomis is basically I can fix this. I can bring him in. We can make this right. And then the cops just ignore him and blow him away. And Loomis is just distraught and destroyed because he just feels like he's let everything down. And I felt like the way that they portrayed his character in the whole alternate sequence, I just liked it better. I thought it was a more... I guess you'd have to see it, and it depends on the person, but I just thought it worked better with the character they were portraying throughout the film prior.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to see it, but I put also another note. I do like the pool scene ending, as far as like if they were gonna because that actually was a reshot ending because the test audiences didn't like this one. But I think tonally, I think the original, what his original vision, I think the ending's better. I don't know. I know you haven't seen it, unfortunately, but I mean,
I'm sure I probably saw it like a while ago, but I didn't watch it with this rewatch.
What do you think? When that, like, if something, I know we're going to talk about it more, but as a final thing, like, what do you think on that? Is that something that's more up your alley with like maybe the more struggle between their characters, between Loomis and Myers?
I'd probably have to see it, like you said, but like the ending that I saw, like it works for what it is, I guess. But it's definitely not something super deep or something that's like you kind of said, like in tune with what the characters were going on. It's like, okay, we got to wrap this up, have something violent happen, roll credits.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm glad that that he was able to show all the endings and the things that he did, because I honestly still, with the zombie films, with the David Gordon Green films we're going to talk about more, I think that there were a lot of great ideas between all of the films, but maybe they weren't necessarily in the right order, the right edit, the right this and that. And that's very fascinating to me with the franchise in general. But anyways, I'm on a tangent. What's your next pick?
Number 11. Miles will be happy to know that this is towards the bottom of the list, because last time I had it, I think at number 5. Or it's pretty close. So from 5 all the way to 11, we've got Halloween H2O.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Halloween H2O, I would probably say like... Because I knew going into it, it was not going to be as good as I remembered it.
Yeah.
Because we did the original list based on memory, based on nostalgia. I knew it wasn't going to be good. So when it came to these rewatches, even more than Halloween Ends, this is the one I dreaded watching the most. I don't know, like... Again, I went into it with an open mind. I took some notes of the things that I liked. But the things that I didn't like heavily outweighed the things that I did like. Of course, I like the subtle references to classic horror that they have in there.
Yes.
They're watching Plan 9 on the TV, guys. Like, there's stuff in here that, like, in the back of my brain, I'm like, oh, nice touch. But that doesn't mean it's a good film. That, like, you can put as many references, as many callbacks. You have Janet Leigh in there with the psycho car and the psycho music. But it doesn't matter if your subject matter isn't good.
There's nothing. The script of the idea for H2O could have been written on 2 fucking pages. Like, if you're being honest, you know what I mean? There's nothing to it, you know?
I like the cops and the people acknowledge that Michael Myers is pretty damn old already, and this is only 20 years. This is not 40 years. To my knowledge, this is the only Halloween film to feature a song by Creed. So
I believe that factoid is correct.
So that gets it a bonus point for me. Very surface level story. I'm even acknowledging this too. I could have had this lower on the list. I could have had this number 12. The couple things that are keeping this up a little higher is I mentioned I'm not ranking this based upon the ending doesn't matter because of resurrection. So in this version, the ending still stands. She kills Michael at the end, in my mind. If you were to just watch this, that's how it is. But again, the preceding 79 minutes of this film, the chase isn't good. Everyone talks about this chase at the end. It's not good. I can barely remember any of the characters. I think even Josh Hartnett isn't that great in it. I mean, he's fine. The boyfriend is fine. There's not much really to say about any of them.
The problem is they all have like 1 or 2 standout scenes in the beginning of the film, and then they do nothing. They just exist in where they need to. It's like by the beat. They're like, oh, stand here until Laurie screams or Michael is here. Like they have nothing. There's nothing to them after that.
And like there were just like so many ways that you could, and I get they wanted to distance it, have her be in like not a witness protection program, but like she's kind of like distance herself. But there's so many things that like they could have done to tie it back into the series that they just didn't. Like no mention of like Ben Tramer. Like there could be a way where like, oh, that wasn't actually him that got killed. Imagine her if she was married to Ben Tramer in this. I'm still just waiting for that guy to come back. He's never going to come back ever. But I don't like how it ignores 4 through 6. I think that there was a good way that you could have been like, oh, Lori faked her death and she didn't actually die in 4 through 6. 4 through 6 still could have mattered.
Yes.
It still could have been canon. But like there's so many things like, and this is like the slippery slope. This is like one of the first series that like I'm aware of where it's like, we're going to make a new sequel, but we're also going to ignore some sequels. And now every franchise kind of does that kind of thing.
Yep.
So it kind of started something that was, in my opinion, detrimental to the movie industry in general, I guess.
There you go.
But the thing that I will say, which is why I'm ranking it above Resurrection, because it sounds like I hate it more than I hate Resurrection, because I said good things about Resurrection. This is the film that cemented Laurie's character. This is the film where you think of Laurie Strode as this badass who confronts Michael Myers. This is really the first film where she does that. In the original film, she's a teenage girl. It's self-defense. This is the first one where she's fighting back in a way that is influencing the character in people's perception of the character. Because even in Halloween 2, when you get to Halloween 2, she's not really doing anything particularly like badass.
She's just trying to survive. She's trying to get through the night. You know, I mean that really is that's all that is. I can agree with that. I mean, I have even on my notes for H2O, I put ending goes hard. I think I put that as that thing.
Yeah.
Like there are parts I like in it. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, there are parts I like in every film. Part of the reason why I said I don't want to watch these maybe ever again and stuff, I watched after our podcast initially, I went back, I'm pretty sure I've watched H2O 3 fucking years in a row because I happened to watch Resurrection and H2O because they were on streaming or something back in 2021. So I've done 3 years in a row or whatever where I've watched H2O. That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, I've seen H2O more than films. A couple films I've given 4.5 or 5 stars, if I'm being honest, and that's pretty fucking stupid to admit. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm happy that we agree a little bit on that, but I think H2O is being reevaluated because I see more people online. Not that we need people to agree with us, but I just think that it was overblown at the time because they rested their laurels on 2 things, killing Myers and Laurie coming back. And they're like, we don't have to... Basically, it's like, that's all that matters. We're going to put asses in seats. Scream. Everyone wants this teen horror stuff. We'll get some fresh kids that are popular. I mean, it was as hollow. You used the word hollow earlier.
Yes, I did.
It was as hollow as it can be. And it worked. It worked at the time, you know?
But going back to it 25 years later or whatever it's been at this point, doesn't work. It doesn't work. I don't know. There's not as much to say about it. This isn't a full video about H2O. We could do a whole thing about H2O. Mask sucks. Kills suck. The CG mask sucks. Like, like there's so much about it that I just don't... It just doesn't vibe with me.
It's not good.
Yeah, so I'll consider that. It's my number 11, but it could be a loose 12 or even like tied with 12.
I have a couple that before I came over, further up the list, where I was like, wait, did I put that at this? Because I wrote everything out, and then I looked again, I'm like, huh. So there's definitely a couple that I could flip-flop to, but we got to keep going because we're just getting to our number 10s.
The top 10 Halloween starting right now.
Jesus Christ, guys. If you need a drink break or a smoke break or whatever, take it right now. My number 10, this was one that I guess the flip side of what you said about ends, where I want to like this one more than I do, and I went in. I've seen this now 3 times, and this third time was my least enjoyable time watching it. I was kind of like, oh, you know, but number 10 is Halloween Kills.
Oof.
I know
Oof.
I know. My guy, all right, I'll say some things. The whole intro, the whole, you know, prequel thing, fire. I love it. I loved it every time I watched it. But all the hospital shit and the crowds and the fucking dialogue and the shit at the bar, so much of it, I'm just like, the more I watch it, I'm like, the writing sucks. The acting is all over the place. I've read in interviews that he wanted to do a Michael Myers exploitation flick, and I feel like, okay, he did get that. You know, the kills are fucking rad. They're gory. They're super inventive. Some of those inventive kills in the series.
So what don't you like about it?
There's just a bunch of shit in the middle that just sucks, dude. And I just don't like the way that so many of the characters are presented as completely fucking idiotic. Just like they're just stuff like that. Like I just, you know, the whole chase sequence of the fucking, you know, escaped patient from Smith's Grove. Like I couldn't get in with any of that. Like the more I've watched it, there's some great shit at the beginning and there's some great shit at the end. And then I have to watch the middle though to get there. And I respect and I can understand why you like it, and there is stuff to like. But
he's acting like I have it ranked number 1 or something, but like
well, you act like I had Ends ranked at number 1. But anyways, it just wasn't it for me. I mean, there are parts I like a lot. I will say the beginning and the end I like a lot. I just really struggle with so much of that middle, and the fact that it's almost 2 hours long and there's probably almost an entire hour that I couldn't, like, I'm just trying to get through it to get to, like, thank God there were some incredible kills at certain points because it kind of kept me going.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I'd still much rather watch it over 3 other films. So I mean,
that's something. I'll take it.
We're talking the Rob Zombie. You know, we'll talk about as we go on, maybe some films back and forth this, but like the Rob Zombie remake, it's like the prequel aspect of it, and then the basically shot for shot remake. It has the distinction of just being so fucking like just mid of the road that it's almost like a non-entity where it's like I don't really mind it, but I've watched it enough in my life. Yeah. You know, it's like that's almost the worst thing. You get a couple of these entries that are almost like such non-entities where you're just like it's fine, but like you're never gonna like choose to go back to it unless you're doing a podcast or something. But I know we'll talk about kills a little bit more when we get to it in your ranking, but I don't have a lot else to say right now besides. Remember, I do like it. Okay, I'll put it this way. I would still right now sit down if you're like, let's watch Halloween Kills. I would do that with you. If you told me any 3 of the previous films, I'd be like, can you find something else, Kat? Like, I'd like honestly, like you got anything? Like, let's throw Jason X on again or something, you know? Like, so that's where I'm at. This is where my division of the Halloween films are. Top 10, could probably throw it on. The last 3,
I was just gonna say, now that we're into the top 10, these next 10 films, although they could be ranked lower than others, these next 10 films are films I like.
I
like these next 10 films.
Yeah.
H2O, Resurrection, and Halloween Ends, not so much. These next 10 films I like.
You're number 10.
Speaking of which, Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Oh, wow.
Number 10.
All right.
The original. I knew going into this one that obviously the beginning portion is a prequel. The ending portion is the shot-for-shot remake. I would have told you, oh, the beginning's great and the ending sucks. That's reverse. That opening was atrocious. Atrocious. It's some of the laziest dialogue I've ever heard in any film. It's just random Rob Zombie redneck. Like, what controversial thing can we say and do?
Oh, you wait. I'm throwing this out there real quick. I told you I did get 3 from Hell on Blu-ray, and we are watching it this fucking October.
We can watch 3 from Hell.
All right,
I want to watch Lords of Salem with you soon too.
Okay, cool. We could double feature that. Anyways, that's after the podcast. Continue. I'm sorry.
I just don't like the idea of Michael coming up from a messed up home. There's so many stories of that in real life. There's so many horror films where it's like, oh yeah, he kills and he's fucked up because he had a fucked up childhood.
The true crime aspect comes in real time into that, his
what can you
films.
assume about Michael in the original film? Not a whole lot. They don't show it. We can assume, and what makes it so scary, he had a perfectly normal childhood.
He just snapped one day, which is the most terrifying thing.
Once you start explaining all this shit is when it loses it for me. But I will say this, although I don't like the beginning, I still don't think the ending is that great either. Like the ending segments. It's still very entertaining. When I was watching this, I was like, oh, I can't wait till it starts feeling like a fucking Halloween film. Like, that's what I was thinking when I was watching the beginning part. But the best part of this film, and I don't think you mentioned this at all, the middle segment. It's not in... The film isn't in thirds. The beginning and the end are a lot bigger. But there's that little sweet spot in the middle where it's Michael and Loomis in the asylum. That's where this film shines. That's where they should have spent a lot more of the focus on this. Because when it tries to be a Halloween film or when it tries to explain how we got to where he's killing, that's where it kind of doesn't hit for me. When it's Michael in the asylum, that is really where you're getting the more interesting stuff. Because regardless of his upbringing, those are very realistic interactions that they would be having in the asylum. Yes, go ahead.
Part of that, in the commentary, because I gotta say, I fell asleep halfway through watching the commentary with Rob Zombie, because I started it late. And then I actually started the film over, or I think I started it right at the actual like remake of the original and watched it without the commentary. So apparently, if I'm remembering this right, all those scenes you're talking about, Rob Zombie just let the camera roll for like 2-3 hours, and he just had them kind of almost like bullet point those conversations. And then he picked and chose the parts that he liked to put into the film. So apparently somewhere out there's like a B-roll of like just 3 hours of random Myers and Loomis conversation, and almost all of it was just...
It's gone now.
Yeah,
probably.
it's gone, but it's also like, it's just ad-libbed. Like he just wanted it to feel as authentic as possible. So maybe that's what you're feeling, because that was maybe the most authentic part of the film.
And like I said, like they do a lot of like black and white like close-ups of Michael in the asylum, which are great.
Yeah.
Just like I feel like that whole segment is the movie he wanted to make. And so that's why I think that shines the most. The beginning feels like any Rob Zombie Halloween film. It feels like it was written by someone in 5th grade. It feels like, I mean, in all honesty, like if you wanted Rob Zombie to remake a franchise, like give him Texas Chainsaw.
That
like
was
he
the
like
most obvious thing.
Like the most like I don't know.
Rob Zombie at times. Sorry I cut you off, but I'll say this, and we've talked about this. Rob Zombie, when he wants to make something or when he has his moments, he shines bright, in my opinion. The problem is his filmography has the strangest inconsistency where he just gets in his own fucking way. He has moments, and we've talked about this. I'm gonna cut myself off here. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the podcast. But he has moments where he shines, and I think that's why he's so disappointing at times.
Yeah, I agree. Sherry Moon's great in this. I mean, you mentioned that as well. I think she's kind of like underrated in a lot of films. Like, I mean, I get it's overdone. I get he uses her in fucking everything. But like, I thought she was great in The Munsters too, even. Like, I don't think she's bad.
Part part of it's the writing. If he
Yes.
gives her,
Yes.
yes. I mean, she is acting out what he writes in the way that he wants things done. So if she has a more humanistic approach or character, it comes off well, when she's not saying "fuck me," whatever the fuck she's doing,
I don't know, I don't know how much is studio interference or whatever, but like, I talked about this in the last one. They used the theme song at like the weirdest, inappropriate times. Like the first time we hear it is when Michael runs out of the principal's office for some reason. Like he hasn't even really done anything that terrible yet. I don't know. The film just feels like it was just a mix match of like studio interference, shit he didn't want to do, shit that he did want to do, but the studio didn't want. A film that maybe he wasn't even that passionate about making if you read up on like a lot of the shit that was going on. So it ends up sort of an unbalanced mess. But on this rewatch, I did find myself liking it a lot more than I previously would have said. So that's why it's number 10.
That's fair. My number 9. This is one that I guess you would say probably climbed the ranks for me. It's Halloween 5, actually. I've watched Halloween 5 twice in the past 2 years.
I thought you were about to say ever. I was like, bro.
No. But when we talked about it in the prior podcast, there's so many. I'm just like, my memories are just wiped of Halloween. Like I remember key scenes. And that's it. Now, I did take some notes. Let me flip over to that. But, I mean, talk about a mess. Halloween 5 is a little bit of a mess. I mean, Halloween 5, after, like, reading about it and listening to other podcasters talk about it, they started filming it, basically, with, like, a non-finished script.
Right.
They had no idea what they were going to do. It was rushed. I think it went into production like 4 or 5 months after Halloween 4 was in theaters. So that just to get something out within a year's time frame, which at that point was the quickest a Halloween film had been made or rushed into production. Right. I mean, just notes that I took. I've always liked the opening. I'm pretty sure I said on the first podcast, the opening where he's, it's hilarious. He's floating down the river. He just barely escapes the whole, police, shootout. I like the Loomis makeup is considerably better in 5 than 4, which I don't know how the fuck that happened considering the budget, but whatever. I had to put probably, I think, the hottest chick in the entire Michael Myers franchise, Tina. Tina is hot as fuck. Thank God she's in it. I'm just going to throw that in there. I put that 5 definitely is the most, like, out of the ones that came out in the 80s, 5 looks and feels like a 1980s film. Part of me enjoyed that more. The jokey cops, like, I think the cops are actually kind of funny, even though they have the weird fucking, like, sound bites when they come on the screen. Yeah. This is where you start to see Loomis, which in the past, when I was younger, I was like, I don't know if I like his character changing, but now as an adult and I understand everything that he's gone through, Loomis is kind of out of control. He's fucking screaming at children. He's just, trying to commandeer stuff. I mean, his obsession with Michael Myers is full blown. I think he's realizing what a fucking failure he is at stopping Michael Myers after all these years, and he's just trying to finally end this nightmare for him. Some funny parts. Michael Myers in a jail cell at the end is fucking hilarious. Just the way that it's shot, it's just fucking so stupid. The fact that Loomis constantly tries to use Jamie as a scapegoat, just says awful shit to her. Like, basically, if that child were to grow up, she was already ruined. But I mean, he's just nasty to her. The Men in Black subplot, which I'm sure we'll talk about even more as the podcast goes on. The fact that they had no fucking idea what they wanted to do with it, and they just threw it in there. But the thing is, through all the chaos and all of it, it's now I think that where I'm at and what my sensibilities are, I think it's the most entertaining it's ever been for me. I mean, it's still only number 9, but I think it's a fun mess. It's a much more fun mess to me than Rob Zombie's or the films I talked about prior. That's what I got to say.
I'll say this, because notoriously, on our first time around, Halloween 5 was at the very, very bottom of my list.
Yes.
I ranked it as the worst in the franchise.
Yes.
So out of all of them, in comparison, no film has risen in the ranks.
It is risen.
As much as Halloween 5.
It's the Rizzler. Halloween 5 is the fucking Rizzler of the fucking podcast.
Yes, exactly.
So what the hell's your number 9 then?
This might piss you off a little bit.
I've already said. I mean, fuck, it's fine. Anyways.
Because like I said, these 10 films that I like, there's a certain way you have to order them. This is just where this one happens to fall at number 9. Doesn't mean that I hate it. Doesn't mean it's a bad film. Doesn't mean that it's number 9 because Michael Myers isn't in it, even though he's not in it.
I already knew it, but hey, yeah.
Halloween 3, just something about it in comparison to some of the other ones. It just wasn't as an enjoyable time to watch as some of these other films. I don't know. I know you love it. I know you're going to talk about it a lot when we get to it on your list. But the things that it shines at, it really shines at. I love the aesthetic. I love the vibes. I love the new synth music. I love that they tried to do something different. I don't think it really would have worked, and we'd be sitting here doing this podcast now if it did become a true anthology series. But I like that they took that risk.
Yes.
There's just some things about it that come off cheesy, I guess, is the way I want to say it. Like, even though it's like, doesn't take itself super seriously, but like, there's a lot of things in it that are just like, this isn't as good as I remember. Because like, had you asked me before I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, Halloween 3 is great. It's like one of the best 80s horror films in general. But for me, like, a lot of it just didn't hit for some reason.
Halloween 3, and we are going to talk about it more later. I will say, I obviously just rewatched it, as we mentioned. It almost comes off more as a weird sci-fi thriller, or like a weird Carpenter-esque genre film, just like a mashup, than it does a horror film. And I am perfectly okay with someone saying it's their favorite, and I'm perfectly okay with it being the redheaded stepchild of the series. Like, I feel differently, but it does not fall in line anywhere with the franchise. So I get it. That's basically, I'm sure I'll talk about it more when we get there, but hey, I think it's a little bit better than number 9, but I'll take it.
I'll say, like, obviously, my favorite shot in any film ever are the kids walking across the mountain with the beautiful fucking moonlight. I mean, it's on every poster.
Yes.
One of my favorite things ever. Tom Atkins is great in it. I'm not the hugest fan of his character, but he is great. Here's a question for you, because I don't know if it's something I'm missing, because I've rewatched Halloween 3 Season of the Witch actually a couple times in the past few years.
Okay.
At what point does she become the robot? Because did he have sex with a robot? Was she a robot the entire time? Did they intentionally send a robot to this town to bring someone to the Silver Shamrock Factory that they didn't want there originally? There's so much in this that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
In my interpretation, she became a robot when she got captured, and then the thing that you see, like strapped to the bed or strapped in that room, is a robot is like a failsafe in case they like fuck everything up. She is the last resort. Like, she'll make sure his character is fucking dead.
And that's after he fucked her or prior?
That's after he fucked her. Because just certain mannerisms watching it again, I think, me personally, I think that's when it happened. She got captured, they replaced her, they fucking killed her, and then she became the robot. I mean, you know, Tom Atkins maybe likes that robot pussy, you know, and I don't know. I mean, hey, the world will never know. Open to interpretation.
There's a lot of stuff in the film that I like, but again, we'll talk about it more when we get to yours. But for me, it didn't always hit.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, that's about it for this time, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the first part of our Halloween ranking. Yes, this is going to be a long one, so it's going to be a few episodes. So make sure you tune back in tomorrow to see part 2 of our definitive ranking of the Halloween franchise. We will see you then, so take care and stay spooky.